If your job gives you a 30-minute lunch break, you should be legally required to not give a fuck about that job. I'm pretty lucky to be doing the work that I do now. My lunch break, which is like an hour and some change. But I'm reminiscing on the first job that I got when I moved out to New York City, which was this really shitty movie theater job. The movie theater was too expensive. They were really weird. The management was terrible. The thing was, you had a 30-minute lunch break, right? Company policy was that you could not wear the movie theater uniform outside of the movie theater. You have to go to the front desk, clock out at the ADP system, take the 4 minutes that takes to walk back, change out of the uniform, and then walk back outside. And then we were on 57th and 12th, which if you don't live in New York City, that's far away from fucking anything. So you have to go find a place. They'd have to make the food. You have to come back. And by the time you got back to the break room, you had maybe like less than 10 minutes to eat your food, clock back in after changing, and you had to clock back in on time or it would count against you, which is like obviously fucking absurd. And it's always like the shittiest, most low stakes jobs that do this to you too.
I think self-diagnosis is valid, and here's why. Autism isn't a disease. You don't catch it, you don't give it to other people. It is a profound difference in neural structure that affects literally everything about the way that you perceive the world. If identities are shaped by the way that you look and the gods that you do or don't believe in and the place that you were born and grew up in, autism affects you even more profoundly than that, because you can be at the intersection of literally anything that a human being can be, still be autistic, and still perceive those things differently. We are both an oppressed identity group and also the most diverse group on the planet. They didn't even have words for what we were for most of human existence, and yet they still rounded us up systematically, decided who the good ones were, and threw the ones they didn't like in German camps. We have frequently been oppressed for the way that our brains work. 60% of those who are diagnosed are incapable of working, and throughout history, they have put us against our will in facilities because they didn't know what else to do with us. And yet, despite this oppression, there is pretty strong evidence to suggest that a lot of the movers and shakers throughout human history were on the spectrum. So if this is something you identify with, which has no perks if you decide that it's you, welcome to the table. I don't need you to get a note from the people that are oppressing you to join in this identity. I frankly can't think of an identity where you need to get the state's permission to join. Except religion. I think you actually have to do that. I know when I was Catholic that I had to go through a bunch of steps in order to be confirmed as one. So I guess that. And nationalism. You know, the state literally has to let you be a citizen. I'm getting way off task, but like race, sexual identity, gender identity, those are things that you don't need like a permission slip for. Although I guess technically you could get like genetic testing, but then there's, you know what? My point is that I have been othered my entire life by the very group of people who want me to convince them that I am the way that I am. I don't need you to get an holistic doctor's permission to be autistic. Oh, you think that you're the thing that people are so terrified of being that they won't take vaccines anymore? Yeah, I don't need you to get a doctor's note. You mean that you've done months of research about this thing that people are so terrified of that the leading charity about it is trying to eradicate us? Wow, you must really be trying to steal our resources that don't exist. Oh, you created a PowerPoint about why you don't know how to talk to other people? Welcome! Pull up a chair! Stop it. You don't need my permission either.
Meatloaf sandwich. Let's check it out. Biden's student loan forgiveness plan has been blocked by Republicans. But why is it nearly impossible for student loan debt to be universally forgiven? Well, our economy is heavily reliant upon enforcing and maintaining loans, and some politicians don't want to loosen the chains. U.S. households owed $16.5 trillion of debt by the second quarter of 2022. For many, living in society requires taking on debt. You need auto, school, mortgage loans. It just so happens that interest has been rapidly rising over the last 10 years, and inflation only stokes the fire. How we got to this damaging system was by enacting the wrong policies. Now we have politicians who want to protect this industry rather than uplift the American people. Nobody wins besides lenders and the politicians who protect them. We need to break free from this debt economy. Okay, I'd try it. I'd take a bite out of that.
I'm autistic. I'm also autistic. I haven't had a lot of partners in dating because they don't seem to understand me. I've had a lot of partners in dating. Some really understood me, but a lot didn't. People know I'm autistic instantly. People don't know I'm autistic instantly, but they definitely know that something is off about me. And then after like a day or two, they're like, why are you so weird? I tend to think that people are my friends, even if I just know their name and nothing else about them. I'm really paranoid about calling people my friends because I don't really have a lot of good luck with them. I sometimes go nonverbal for extended periods of time. I haven't had a nonverbal episode, but I have had minimally verbal episodes. We don't really have a lot in common, but we're both still autistic, which means we do share one thing. Panic when the teacher asks us to say our name during roll call, and a never-ending pile of squishmallows.
There's so many people in the comment section telling this parent to take her child to the ER. There are no beds. There are no beds in the country for children right now. These are the consequences of letting these illnesses run free. What part are you all not getting? What is not clicking to you all? Pediatric hospitals are at capacity. Children are being turned away. If this is the first fucking time that you all have heard about this, that is a fucking problem. You all are so fucking out of touch. Truly. This was always on the horizon. Now we're here. You are sacrificing these kids with every breath you take.
I remember one time back when I was still living with my parents, I was folding clothes with my mom on her bed, and I asked her this question that I've been thinking about. I said, does it ever feel like really crazy and like surreal to you to like look at me standing up and walking around and doing stuff and knowing that like I like came out of you and now I'm like this full human being with my own thoughts and my own life, and I exist? And her response blows my mind to this day. She looked at me and she said, no, not at all. It's not weird to me, even a little bit. When I heard that, I had to rethink everything. I was like, oh my God, no, like you're so right. That's so crazy. Because like I have a lot of siblings. My mom has given birth now 5 times. To her, it is not weird. It is not abstract. It is not surreal. It's the realest thing that is out there. And for me, I mean, like, you know, I grew up around a lot of kids. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. So like I was always around kids, but I was never expected to like take care of them or anything like that. I was never old enough to do that by the time that was happening. So for me, it was always really abstract still. And even now, you know, like I've moved out, I don't really have a lot of friends who have kids, and I don't have kids myself. And for me, it's really kind of surreal and theoretical, but that's literally just because it's not a part of my life and I don't have experience with it. And for the people who do, it's like very real. And it highlighted to me sort of like a privilege that I have that I didn't really know that I have, that I live in a society where it's possible for me to completely remove myself from the labor involved in child rearing, which has led to this point where like I'm so removed from the context that leads to like the basic formation of a lot of people's really basic daily lives. And I don't have the skills that are necessary to help those people with some of the hardest and most important parts of their life. I think that a lot of the time when we talk about organizing and community, we talk about people gaining skills for like material skills, like things like sewing or cooking or whatever, so that you can trade those skills with your neighbors. But I think that a really underrated one, and one that I think needs to honestly be universal, is childcare. One that I think needs to honestly be universal is childcare.
If you are a leftist and you don't really know how to get started with mutual aid and you like kids, I cannot emphasize this enough. Help your friends who have kids with their kids or with anything. It is impossible to overstate how much stress parents are under trying to keep everything together on our own. If you offer to babysit even like half an hour once a month, you will have a place in those parents' hearts forever, and you will be doing a genuine, good, helpful thing for your community, because most parents really need the help, and you would be helping the kids a lot too, because stressed out parents are not great parents. Childcare is so expensive. Parents need the support and kids need the influence of other adults in their lives. So helping out with childcare is doing a huge community service. If you already help your friends and family with their kids, congratulations. That's praxis and I love you for it.
When I was a kid, like 10 years old, I had the coolest shoes. They were white Nike high-top basketball shoes with zippers instead of laces. Did I play basketball? No, but I loved those shoes. I loved them so much, in fact, that I wanted to customize them, make them cooler, more me. So I did. I completely colored one shoe in with a black Sharpie and used blue electrical tape for accents. I was so proud of myself, thought I did a great job, but my mom was so mad at me for ruining my shoes and wasting her money. It didn't make sense to me, still doesn't. They were my shoes. And because it doesn't make sense to me, I let my kids customize their things with boundaries. I identified the difference between customization and destruction. You want to cut a hole in your shirt? No. You want to cut Barbie's hair? Well, as long as you understand Barbie's hair's not growing back, go for it. If they're just changing the appearance, not the function, it's fine with me. And they always have to ask me before they go ahead and change things. I just don't consider it a waste of my money if it's adding value to my kids' lives, even if it's not the value that I saw in it.
If you feel like the book talk tables at bookstores don't match what you actually like to read, show me what you want the book talk tables to look like. Here's some of my choices. What would yours look like?
When are we going to start protecting Black women?
We got like a sisterhood now because of what we all have been through.
Quinn tells me for decades she's lived in fear of this man.
Back in September, a police officer in Kansas City, Kansas, this guy, Detective Roger Golubsky, was indicted and arrested after decades of accusations that he was preying on and sexually assaulting Black women and children during his criminal investigations. A federal grand jury indicted this man on 6 counts of civil rights violations. Mind you, this is the same detective who was accused of framing a Black man for a double homicide in 1994. All because that man's mother refused the detective's sexual advances. Here's some perspective. The prosecutors for this case have amassed 36,000 pages of evidence against him, and he still pled not guilty. Activist groups in the community are afraid that this person is going to get thrown in jail as he deserves, and the city will feel like their work is done. But the community is saying that this is a part of a pattern. So they're asking the U.S. Justice Department to open a pattern or practice investigation into the Kansas City, Kansas PD. This is exactly what it sounds like. An investigation to determine if there is in fact a pattern or practice of discrimination present here. This is similar to the investigation that the DOJ conducted in Ferguson, Missouri after Michael Brown was killed. The community knows that stuff like this rarely gets picked up by the news media. So they're planning to make noise. They're holding a rally in Kansas City, Kansas. If you can make it, be there. You can sign up here, and as always, like and follow for more.
If someone has OCD and they have intrusive thoughts, and those intrusive thoughts are racist, that doesn't mean that that person is racist. OCD is so misunderstood. I think unintentionally, the most gatekept disorder is OCD, because those who suffer from OCD understand. Like, have you heard the phrase, people who are crazy don't think that they're crazy? People with OCD know they're crazy, and that's a new sort of hell to live in, where you're fully aware that you're fucking insane, but you have to play it off like you're not. And I know I sound like a Joker stan Reddit poster right now, but that's genuinely how it is. You have evil, vile, disgusting, horrible thoughts. And I'm gonna be so fucking for real with you guys right now. These are not just little thoughts. Sometimes they come with urges, arousal, feelings. And I am very much on thin ice with TikTok guidelines, but it is bad. You know, like P words, those adults who like non-adults, people with OCD will sometimes get a little feeling when they look at a kid because they had a thought that just popped up in their head and they had no control over this thought showing up. But that thought, gave them a feeling, and now they're like, oh my God, am I attracted to, I can't tell anybody this because what the fuck is wrong with me? I'm disgusting. I am awful. I can't believe I ever thought this. I can never go around children again. I have to stay away from kids. I actually have to get away from the nearest school district. I have kids. I can't be around my own kids. That's how that shit plays out. And I feel like I'm acting so dramatic right now, but I'm angry, so I'm letting myself. Same thing with race. You are a white person, you see a black person, you have this thought and this feeling. Let's say you have a thought about I don't know, a slur. You think of a slur and then you have a feeling of like fear. And then you're like, why am I scared of this black man? Like, I'm not afraid of black people. But like racists are afraid of black people. Am I racist? Oh my God, what do? I have to not tell anybody about this. And the reason I'm upset is because a TikToker who was white posted that she has racist, oh my God, she has racist intrusive thoughts, and then all these other black creators started dogpiling on her, being like, why would you post this on the internet? You know, like, this is why people with OCD, this is why no one knows shit about OCD, because no one with OCD talks about it. Because if we talked about it, we would be sent away and put down. Trust me, the people with OCD are so ashamed of their thoughts that you don't have to worry about it. They hate themselves because of thoughts, and those intrusive thoughts are racist. That doesn't mean that that person is racist.
That video is a great primer on OCD intrusive thoughts and how they work. I really recommend that you watch it. I wanted to address kind of the most common reaction to this whole thing, which is people saying, why are you posting about this on the internet? The least you can do is keep this to yourself. There are a lot of answers to that question, but the biggest one I think is very simple. People with OCD are 10 times more likely than the general population to commit suicide. And contrary to popular belief, when that happens, it is not because their room is too clean or they're tired of making their socks match. 90% of the time, it's because they suffer from severe intrusive thoughts that have convinced them they are an irredeemably evil person, a pedophile, an abuser, a racist. These thoughts exist to oppose your actual belief system. People with OCD are tortured by these thoughts, and they're forced to hear them against their will. And because these thoughts are designed to attack your value system, the more anti-racist work you do, the more you care about racial justice, the more educated you become, the more likely you actually are to be tortured by racial intrusive thoughts. A lot of people of color with OCD have these thoughts for exactly that reason. If you don't know what OCD is because nobody talks about these symptoms and you don't know what's wrong with you, it is genuinely one of the most isolating and terrifying experiences in the world. And I'm really not exaggerating when I say that finding out what OCD was through the internet genuinely saved my life. So there's like an immense material value to making viral videos that succinctly explain the stigmatized symptoms of OCD. OCD is one of the mental illnesses for which awareness work is actually materially useful, which is why I find it so ironic and so unfortunate that it's also one of the mental illnesses for which awareness is seemingly not welcome. And to be clear, I completely understand people of color being made uncomfortable by these discussions, being hurt or triggered by these discussions. To hear that somebody is having negative, intrusive thoughts about you is scary, whether it be racial thoughts, misogynist thoughts, violent thoughts. And it's totally okay to set boundaries both in real life and online. It's totally okay to block that person or to block me if these conversations are triggering or upsetting. I also completely understand people of color having legitimate concerns because white people have a long history of using the label of mental illness to excuse legitimate racism. I hope that the videos that have stemmed from this discussion have answered those questions. I do want to note that I have seen a lot of critical comments that are not from people of color. They're from white people who are essentially patting themselves on the back on how non-racist they are because they don't have OCD. And what is not okay and what is not constructive is ignoring decades of established medical science to publicly label someone evil and deserving of mass punishment, something that their brain is already telling them every second of every day because they talked publicly about an extremely stigmatized illness. Mental illness in real life is vulgar, it is terrible, it is destructive, it is socially unacceptable, it is morally complex. And I think it's very convenient for people to build a politic around mental illness in which they pretend that that isn't true, but it is.
Twitter feels increasingly alive. Yes, it does. Let's go over what Elon has done in the last couple days. Senator Ed Markey was like, hey, Elon, why is someone impersonating me, a sitting senator? And very smart businessman Elon was like, perhaps it is because your real account sounds like a parody? This, of course, is a problem that Elon caused himself. And why does your PP have a mask? PP, I think he means profile picture, but everyone on Twitter calls it a PFP. By the way, Ed Markey sits on a subcommittee that regulates websites exactly like Twitter. I'm just going to read Ed Markey's response here. One of your companies is under an FTC consent decree. Auto safety watchdog NHTSA is investigating another for killing people. And you're spending your time picking fights online? Fix your companies or Congress will. Elon did not respond to this. Elon also posted a tweet that says Twitter is the biggest click driver on the internet by far and got fact-checked by his own website. It turns out Facebook drives 74% of clicks and Twitter only does 7%. Also, Twitter just started firing thousands of his contractors, including contractors who are in charge of child safety workflows, if you can imagine what that means. And now the contractors, some of whom are pregnant women, are scrambling for healthcare, waiting for their COBRA information to come in the actual mail. Also, Elon has locked down his code and only accepting any updates if he can look at it personally. To be fair to Elon, this is a normal thing that tech companies do when they're being incompetently managed. Now Elon is funneling money to save Twitter through SpaceX by having SpaceX buy advertising on it. Now here's a big one. Elon took to Twitter to blame its slow performance in many countries on the efforts of the programmers. And one of the programmers was like, I worked on that and what you're saying is wrong. And Elon is like, then please correct me, which is something that wrong people say. What is the right number? What have you done to fix that? So the guy went on a long screed about all the issues here, including that Twitter is bloated with features that get little usage. And Elon fired him by replying to someone else saying he's fired. Very brave of you, sir. And then Elon was like, we're going to do what that guy said anyway. And then he accidentally shut off two-factor authentication because he's a genius and a visionary. Also, he said, we're going to stop saying what device a tweet was written on. Literally, no one even knows why we did that. And then Jack Dorsey was like, yeah, we actually do know why we did that. And then finally, to top it all off, he responded to a picture of the Matt Foley motivational speaker sketch from SNL and said, great movie. Anyway, can't wait for the Mars mission, Elon.
What is it with the autistic need/urge to know why something is?
Bottom-up thinking. That's how our brains work. Autistic people don't so much miss the forest for the trees, so much as they go through and individually categorize every single tree so they can conceptualize the forest. Some folks like the puzzle metaphor where you're doing a jigsaw puzzle and once you get enough of the pieces down, you can look at it and go, oh, I see what it is. But I prefer the programming metaphor because I think of our brain as a squishy computer. And just like how AI doesn't instinctually understand things without being given parameters, so too do we need to build our own. And the hows and the wheres and the whens are often very easy parts of it, so you get them down really quick, and then you spend a lot of time on the why because it's usually the most important and also the most resource-intensive part of the programming process. So you spend a lot of time on it so you can understand stuff. This is a resource-intensive way to think, but it also has a lot of benefits, so you're probably better at understanding things than most people, unless you're trying to understand people.
Oh yeah, Picasso really stole from African art. And some people talk about it as an African period that only lasted a couple of years, but I would say that it was his inspiration from African art that shifted him into the style that defined his most celebrated works well after that. In general, he owed everything to African artists, because before his African period, he was making stuff like this. It's very different, it's very inventive for sure, but his people still look like he's making realistic humans, you know? Until
Lambo, 1907, African period. Now he's playing with form and way more asymmetry. The rhythm is totally different.
apparently it starts one night at Gertrude Stein's house where Henri Matisse is here with this sculpture he has. Picasso becomes obsessed with it and clutches it all night. And then his obsession grows when he goes to the museum, which has all of these looted, stolen artifacts and art pieces from European imperialism in Africa. The inspirations are very clear. There's tons of memoir he writes, there's tons of friends that talk about it, but it doesn't end in 1909, because after that he enters his Cubist period with Georges Braque, and that's just also very clearly lifted from African art. I recommend this article, it's really, really good. She writes that Picasso's use of two-dimensionality, fierce geometry, and flat planes was only possible because African sculptors and carvers had been mastering the art of abstraction for centuries. Later in life, Picasso started denying that anything he had made had anything to do with African art at all, and people seemed to kind of believe him. It was clear that he had very little respect for African people at all. The article reads that, according to the post-colonial scholar Simon Kakandi, Picasso was infatuated with the idea of what he considered primitive and tribal, but there is very little evidence that he showed interest in Africans as people and producers of culture. And he was a violent abuser, and that's a whole thing too. I just wanted to throw that in there. Modern artists were trying to figure out how to unlearn the realism that art school had taught them. So they looked to be inspired by people like children, mentally insane, non-white, people that didn't go to school, like people of lower classes, used their art to figure out how to do abstraction and then took all the credit And I don't know, here we are now.
I think that as a queer creator, one of the most common misconceptions I get on my videos is that I'm trying to cater to cishet people. I especially get this when I go into the details of my identity, since it's quite complex and I feel comfortable talking about that to an LGBT audience. For those of you who don't know, I'm bisexual, transmas, T for T, and I'm on the OA spectrum, and when I talk about any one of those, I get a plethora of people asking why I feel the need to adopt so many labels. For cishet people or anyone new to the community, it can be confusing, and I get that, but my labels serve as a method of communication to people who understand them. I don't tell strangers I'm gay demisexual, I'll just tell them I have a boyfriend, because frankly that's all they need to know. But when it comes to a space where I'm more comfortable, I'll absolutely elaborate about my experience and why I identify the way that I do. I'm saying this because I see a lot of especially younger queer kids getting attacked on TikTok because they have many different labels or an assortment of pronouns they go by. And I just want to remind you guys that if they're not hurting themselves or anyone else, then just leave them alone. They're likely just trying to express themselves in a space where they feel accepted. With that in mind, if you're queer in any way or you're an allo cishet ally, then you're welcome on my page, but just keep in mind that people do experience their identities in different ways than you, and a difference in experience doesn't make that experience any less valid. Feel free to tell me how you identify in the comments, even if it's complicated, and I hope you all have a lovely day.